Welcome to Life Lessons from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we will be discussing the second part to the 24 Gurus, Dattatreya's lessons from nature. And so I'm very excited about continuing and then concluding this section of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just as a nice reference to keep in mind as we discuss the 11th canto is that in the Bhagavata Purush, the 11th canto is Krishna's forehead. Different cantos correspond with different parts of Krishna's body. 10th canto Bhagavatam is his smile. 11th canto, his forehead, where his brain represents the intelligence. So this 11th canto is very philosophical. It requires some intelligence, or it engages our intelligence in devotional service. Okay, let me chant some verses of invocation. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 2. Sutta uvacha yam pravajantam anapetam apeta krityam vaipayano viraha kattara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravo bidedus tam sarvabhuta hridayam munim anantosmi. Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Sukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son!' Only the trees, which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation, echoed in response to the aggrieved father." This is actually the pranam mantra for Sukadeva Goswami. This and the next verse, verses 2 and 3 of the second canto. They're chanted by Sutta Goswami before he begins speaking Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisharanya. Text 3. Yasvanubhavam akila shruti sharamekam adyatmadipam atitirti satam tamodam samsarinam karunayaha purana guhyam tavyasasonamupayami guru muninam. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. Chant a few more verses. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 4. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jaya mudhirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Text 17. Shinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantastohya bhadrani virunoti suhritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. I think two more verses. Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text 40. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhyanyam Svastyaya Namahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God. It is it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Svastyaya, Dhanyam Svastyaya Namahat. Okay, we'll conclude there. Too much excitement for reading the glories of Bhagavatam, but we need to discuss the Bhagavatam. Now, let me just acknowledge some of you who are here with us. My dear wife, Sri Gandharvika, here in New York City, says Hari Bol. So great you could join us these past few classes. Harinam Daya Sindhuji joining us from Sydney, Australia, says Hari. Welcome, Harinam. I received your message. I'm leaving for India in a couple of hours to Vrindavan. And when I'm there, I will discuss with Parikrama organizers in response to your question. Thank you. Bihal joining from Polska says Hare Krishna. Welcome, Bihal. Thanks for joining. Shamamanjari with us from South Africa says Hare Krishna, Shri Palad. A blessed Kartik month to you and all devotees. Thank you very much. I'll be in Vrindavan, Shri Vrindavan Dham, during Kartik. And as I said, I'm just about to leave for the airport. Kirtina is with us from Norway, sending gratitude. And Janaki joins us from Hungary. Welcome, Janaki. Thank you for being with us. On Instagram, we are joined by Bhagavatam, a regular participant, as well as, let's see here, just turning here, Bhagavatam. We have Pamela Morseg, Mr. Sahu, who says, hi, how are you? Very well, thank you. Smit Parma is with us. Yadav Purevich, Hasbikshar Aryan, Jay Mahesh, Gaurachandra Das, I think from Los Angeles, if it's the same. Luli 4071. Himani 23 says, we await you in Vrindavan. Thank you very much. Thank you. Looking forward to being there. By Radharani's blessings, so with your blessings as well. Ananda Bihari is with us as well. Valmikam Ji. Welcome all of you to this discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam. We, if you remember from our previous class, our previous discussion, we began a conversation between Dattatreya and Yadu. The context was a discussion that has started between Krishna and Uddhava. Krishna is winding up his pastimes. Uddhava is aware of this. He's approached Krishna, asking him initially to take him with him to Vaikuntha. Krishna says, no, you still have some more service to do. You must remain here and without attachment. Now everything is going to be winding up. Your family, your friends, your associates, they're all going to be departing. Dvarka itself is going to fall into the sea. So you must be detached, and I need you to stay on earth for some other purpose. He will reveal that at the end of the 11th canto. So Uddhava says, well, you're telling me to be detached, but how do you do that? So Krishna says, I will explain to you. He says, you apply your intelligence, and even by applying your intelligence, this is called aparoksha, the indirect path. By analyzing the world around you, you can also receive guidance from Krishna through nature. The direct path, you apply your intelligence to direct practices of bhakti. The indirect path, as you wander through the world, you take guidance from Krishna through nature. And in this respect, he told the story of Dattatreya meeting Yadu, Krishna's and Uddhava's forefathers, forebearer for the Yadu dynasty. Dattatreya was a very self-satisfied and contented Avaduta sadhu. And Yadu asked him, how did you achieve this enlightened state of being? And Dattatreya explained, I have learned to be this way by receiving guidance from my gurus, who number 24. And he explained them as the different elements and the different celestial bodies and different animals. And so in our previous discussion, we had Dattatreya explain the first 5 of these gurus, and they were the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. They related to, if we analyze them, what they were teaching relates to our character. With the earth, we have stability and service. With the water, we have purity that purifies. With fire, we have that which removes contamination through that which it contacts. Rather than being contaminated, it consumes those contaminants. With air, we have a detachment. And with sky, we have a reminder of the boundless nature of spirit. And to recognize that as our true nature, our true identity as spirit souls. So today we continue this journey. We'll contemplate 19 other gurus that are discussed in these chapters. It's chapters 7 to 9 of the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. What we have discussed up until now was based on the 7th chapter. And today we'll move more quickly to conclude the 7th chapter and then to go through the 8th and 9th chapters as well. Of course, this is a summary. To go more deeply, you should read these chapters yourself. So today we're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, chapters 7 to 9. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we will be discussing 19 gurus. We'll divide them between 3 sections. First will be lessons from celestial bodies and creatures. Celestial bodies, terrestrial bodies, we could say, verses 43 of the 7th chapter. So 43, 7th chapter through to verse 6 in the 8th chapter. Then we'll have lessons from creatures of the earth about indulgence, verses 7 to 21 of the 8th chapter. And then we'll have lessons on renunciation and spiritual focus from chapter 8, verse 22 through to chapter 9, verse 24, which is the last verse of the 9th chapter. Let's dive in. Lessons from celestial and terrestrial bodies, verses 43 of the 7th chapter to verse 6 of the 8th chapter. The first celestial body we have is the moon. Dattatreya explains to Yadu how he learned from his guru, the moon. With the moon's phases of waxing and waning, waxing, the moon is getting bigger to our eye, and waning, the moon is getting smaller till it becomes a dark moon to our eye. And by going through these phases of increasing and decreasing, Dattatreya is reflecting on the body itself, how it goes through different changes of birth and growth, remaining for some time, and then dwindling, old age, and death. He said, but the moon itself remains unchanged through these phases. In the same way, the soul itself is eternal and unaffected by the transformations of the body. And so the lesson for you and I is that the body may age and change, but we, the Atman, we remain unaltered and eternal. And that's the identity that we should be conscious of. His next guru, guru number 7, is the sun. The sun shines on all things without discrimination. It illuminates the world, and it doesn't discriminate, neither does it become attached to anything that it touches. It also withdraws its light in the evening, symbolizes how the sage should also engage with the world without becoming entangled in it. And so the sun, in this way, teaches the difference between perceiving the reality that is the soul and becoming blinded by external appearances of false coverings. The lesson for you and I is to engage the world but be unattached, like the sun that illuminates without being affected. Guru number 8 is not a planet anymore, but it is a pigeon. And Dattatreya tells a story how once he saw a pair of pigeons fly away from their nest. And when they left the nest, a hunter climbed up and captured the little chicks that were inside that nest. And when the couple returned and they saw their little chicks, they flew in quickly to try to rescue them, but it was a trap. And so with that, the parents were also caught by this hunter. The lesson: excessive attachment to family, material relationships can bind us and lead to suffering. That's what Dattatreya has learned by observing these pigeons getting captured by a hunter. Dattatreya's ninth guru is a python. Some of us, we see a python, we become afraid. Dattatreya, he sees a python and he studies it and observes it, and he gets lessons in transcendence. The python lives by waiting for food rather than going out and looking for it. He waits for the food to come to him. And in this, Dattatreya learns the value of patience and contentment. In the Bhagavatam, elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, we have a description of the Python yogi who practices Python yoga. He doesn't go out begging. He just lies on the field, and I think it's Prahlad Maharaj who meets him and asked him, "What is your practice? What is your sadhana?" He says, "I'm doing Python yoga." I've learned from the python not to look for food, but rather just to lay here. And if it's my karma, the food will come to me. If it's not my karma, I will go hungry. He said, but whether I act or not, my karma will only allow me to get what I am due to receive. And so Dattatreya, he's also learned this lesson from observing the python yoga. Finally, for this section, another terrestrial body that Dattatreya learns from is the great ocean. He says that the ocean remains full regardless of how many rivers flow into it or whether the rivers dry up. The ocean is the ocean. In that sense, the ocean remains stable, or you can say calm. Rivers may flow in, rivers may not flow in. The ocean is going to be itself what it is. Similarly, he says a yogi's mind should remain undisturbed by external gains or losses. And so for you and I, the lesson is to stay balanced and calm, both in gain and loss, like the vast and powerful ocean. So these are gurus 6 through to 10. And we can just pause here to conclude this section. Dattatreya is emphasizing to Yaru the benefits of detachment and balance in life, whether it's through the phases of the moon, or the detachment of the sun, or the patience of the python. The lesson is that we should seek our freedom through a detachment to the material world while engaging with it, but with wisdom. That is, we control desire, we practice moderation, and this can enable us to be peaceful while in the world. Okay, so now we go to the second section. We learn from some different creatures, 5 or more different creatures, about attachment and how attachment can be very dangerous. The first teacher, the first guru in this section is the moth. So these are famous examples. Dattatreya, he's going to give us examples. We can relate them to the senses. So the moth is drawn to the light of a flame. And sometimes you'll see this in India or other, I've seen it mostly in India. The light might stay on through the night, and the next morning you'll see a pile of moths on the ground below the light, because the moths have been flying around that light all night until they come to a state of exhaustion and just fall to the ground, dead. Otherwise, if it's a naked fire, a naked flame, they fly into that flame and burn themselves up. So sometimes also around a candle, you'll see that the next morning there's a pile of dead, burnt moths around that candle. And so the moth's attraction to fire symbolizes how we are led to ruin by uncontrolled desire to see, particularly material pleasures, material beauty. Our eyes drag us away from transcendence as we seek to enjoy and exploit the material nature with our eyes. And this leads us from the path of self-realization, leads us away from the path of transcendence. Instead, our eyes should be seeking out Krishna's beauty. The next guru, number 12, is the bumblebee and the honeybee. He has 2 bees as his example. He says the bumblebee gathers small amounts of nectar from many different flowers, teaching the principle of moderation and humility. It doesn't take too much from any one source, and similarly, we should take only what we need from the world. From the honeybee, he says the honeybee stores up large amounts of honey, but it's often stolen by others, like the honey thief, the beekeeper, we could say today. And so this teaches us that hoarding wealth and resources can lead to loss. Those who hoard material possessions may be left with nothing. And so we are taught here from these bees to practice moderation, avoid hoarding or excessive accumulation. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, this bee is also given as an example for the sense of fragrance, that the lusty bee is drinking. So if it's not practicing moderation, the bumblebee, as this Dattatreya is describing here, then the bee may become intoxicated with one flower, one lotus flower, and unable to fly away from it because it just wants to keep gathering nectar and drinking the honey of that flower. And then at sunset, the lotus flower closes, and unable to leave at the proper time, that bee gets trapped inside and crushed inside the closing lotus. And so this is a metaphor for how we can be dragged away by the sense of smell. When we want to smell independently of Krishna, flowers that are not offered to him, but just for our own gratification. This can distract us from transcendence. Then our 13th guru is the elephant. The elephant is lured into, how do you catch an elephant? So there's a traditional practice. The elephant tamer or hunter, they'll make a trap by digging a hole in the ground, and to capture a male elephant, then they will tie up a female elephant by that pit. They might cover it with some branches, and then the male elephant will catch the scent of the female, and wanting to enjoy with her, he'll go through the forest, moving quickly and confidently, but then fall into that pit. And then the elephant tamer will starve the male elephant initially, and then slowly starts to feed little bits, and the mighty elephant becomes dependent and subservient to the elephant tamer. Thinks this person is my benefactor, this person is my master, and I will serve them. And once the elephant has been sufficiently conditioned in this way, then the elephant tamer lets them out of the pit and takes them away for domestic use. And so this is a lesson in how sexual desire can trap the soul. The desire for touch. The elephant represents the sense of touch. Just as the male elephant is lured into a trap by desire, in the same way, male or female, any of us, can be lured away by desire for the gratification of the sense of touch. The 14th guru is not one of these edibles. It's the honey thief. So the honey thief, or today we might say the beekeeper, steals the honey that the bees have painstakingly collected. And this shows how those who work hard may sometimes lose their efforts to others. For renunciants and ascetics, it also teaches how they can live off what their householders produce without the need for worldly possessions. So the householders work hard, and the sadhus, they go door to door with their begging bowl and receive bhiksham. Bhavati bhiksham dehi. And so in this way, they are free of karmic implications. The householder has to work and produce, and in doing so, they get implicated in the karmas of production. Often it involves some kind of himsa, some kind of harm. One living entity is food for the other. So if you're feeding cows, for example, you're having to harvest the grain, so kill the grain to feed the cow, and then you take the cow's milk. So like this, in production, then there is some kind of exploitation and karmic implication. But the honey thief is teaching Dattatreya how the sadhu can live without getting implicated in that way. Of course, even in begging charity, in receiving that charity, then the sadhu is also taking some karma. And so some sadhus don't even beg. They just wait, more like the Python yogi, to receive whatever comes of its own accord. Madhavendra Puri, you can see he did like this. He was sitting at Govinda Kund. He didn't beg for charity. He just chanted. And if someone brought something, he would take. If nobody brought, then he would just fast. Of course, Krishna saw him there, and he came to Madhavendra Puri and said, why don't you, in disguise as a cowherd, so why don't you, the ladies told me you haven't eaten anything. In Vrindavan, nobody goes hungry. If you need something, you just go and ask, you beg. And if somebody doesn't ask, he says, then I personally come and take care of him. That's Krishna. He takes care of everybody. Our next guru, 15, is the deer. So the deer is one of these metaphors for the five senses. In the case of the deer, it gets captivated by the sound of a hunter's flute. So in this class, we've learned how to catch an elephant. Now we'll also learn how traditionally deers were hunted in India. Apparently, they are very much attracted to the flute song. And so the hunter would go into the forest with a flute and sit in the tree and play a melodious song. As we have in the Venu Gita, the gopis describe how the deer are captivated by the sound of Krishna's flute. They've stopped moving, they just stand stationary to hear that sound. Of course, all of Vrindavan is listening to the sound of Krishna's flute. But apparently, deer are particularly attracted to sound. And so the hunter plays the flute, the deer come near, they become immobile, and then the hunter takes out its bow and arrows and catches its prey. And so similarly, people can be distracted by the desire for hearing pleasant sounds that are not connected to Krishna. And so this is a reminder to us, to Dattatreya. He's taken a lesson from the deer to be cautious of this distraction, not to lose his focus on spiritual life by wanting to hear maybe interesting stories or pleasant songs that have little to do with spiritual life or that are distracting from spiritual life. Finally, for this section, we have the last guru to Dattatreya, and it is, how many senses have we covered? We've covered 4 plus a honey eater. So there's 1 sense remaining. What might that be? It is the sense of taste or the tongue. And so the guru that Dattatreya learns from in relation to the tongue is the fish. Yes, fishing is very popular, a popular pastime, not for Vaishnavas, but popular in the world, in society. And the pastime of fishing involves putting some bait on a hook and throwing it into the water, dangling it there on the end of a line, and then the fish swim along. They're unable to control their desire to eat whatever that bait may be. And so they are lured by the bait to bite, and then they are hooked and pulled out of the water on the end of the line to their demise. And so this shows us how attachment to the sense of taste can lead to bondage and suffering. Uncontrolled sensory desire for food that is not pure, that is not offered, can lead to spiritual downfall. And so this is the lesson that Dattatreya has learned by observing the fish. We can just pause here to conclude this section. Dattatreya, the Avadhuta, has explained to Yadu the lessons of desire and uncontrolled senses. The desire to enjoy the 5 senses independently of Krishna can tie up the soul in bondage in the material nature and in the continued cycle of birth and death. And so that is what Dattatreya has learned from these creatures and has shared with us through Yaru. Let's go to our 3rd section then. This 3rd section, we will learn something about detachment. So we see how the senses can bind us. What is the solution to this? To practice renunciation and to have a spiritual focus. In this respect, Dattatreya's first teacher is a woman named Pingala. Pingala was in fact a society girl, society woman. That is, she had many lovers, and they would pay for her company. And she lived in the city of Videha. And once she was waiting anxiously in the night for a client to come to take her services, but no one came. And so in that moment, in a moment, she became very detached from everything. She was waiting anxiously over many, many hours, looking down the street to see, looking through her window, looking down her street to see if someone will come for her company. But as no one came, she had a moment of spiritual insight, realization. She realized the futility of happiness and material pleasures. And she became disgusted with the life that she was living. And she turned her mind instead to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and found inner peace and contentment. And so Dattatreya learned from this that material desire is the root of suffering, and that peace comes from renunciation of worldly cravings or urges or attachment and turning to the Lord. In this way, he accepted the prostitute Pingala as one of his 24 gurus. You see how enlightened he is, that he's applied his intelligence not just from the nature around him, but also human society and even sections of human society that we might consider um, unable to provide us with spiritual guidance or lessons. But no, for Dattatreya, he's also taken this Pingala as one of his teachers. The 18th guru of Dattatreya is the hawk. So once a hawk was carried, Dattatreya saw a hawk carried some meat in its beak, and other birds were attacking the hawk to try to steal that meat from him. And so this hawk was being battered on all sides by these other birds that were attacking. Finally, this hawk decided it's not worth it for me to hold on to this meat when I myself am being attacked in this way and I might lose my life. And so finally, the hawk just dropped it. He dropped the meat, and in doing so, experienced relief and peace. And so Dattatreya learned from this that letting go of material attachments and possessions can be relieving, like the hawk that found peace after dropping that meat that it was holding so tightly with attachment and then having to endure so much pain on being attacked by others that were envious or jealous, to take that from it. Another of Dattatreya's gurus, his 19th guru, is a child. Jesus, he once said that we have to be like a child to enter the kingdom of God. And so Dattatreya, he also had a similar insight. He saw a child, or he saw children, and he saw that they were very free. They were free of anxiety. They were just plain because they were not yet burdened by social responsibilities and desires. And so he learned from these plain children that to be free of worldly anxiety and to focus instead on devotion, on one can experience joy, one can experience peace. And so the lesson is to live with childlike simplicity and freedom, free from anxiety, finding happiness and devotion. In psychology, there is the idea of finding your inner child, that as children we are free, we are not concerned about others' judgments, we're not jaded by the impressions of engaging with society. we can think big and dream big and find excitement in small things. And so finding your inner child is about rediscovering that person who you were before you took on the baggage of other people's judgments and doubts and fears, um, before you took on that jadedness and put up barriers around you, trying to protect yourself from what others might think. And so Dattatreya, he's learned to be like a child. And that's one of the things that Yaru noticed in him, that he was so free and playful and easy. And that was one of the things that attracted Dattatreya to actually inquire, so attracted Yaru to inquire of Dattatreya. So he's revealing, oh yes, the child was also one of my gurus that I learned from. His 20th guru is a young girl. She is not yet married, but she's of marriageable age. And so once she was in her home and she was alone, and a family came there to speak with her parents about asking for her hand in marriage. So she received them and had them sit in the home, and then went to the back of the kitchen to prepare some food for the guests. And while she was preparing the food, grinding some spices, chopping some vegetables, her bracelets were making a lot of noise. Ching, ching, clink, clink, clack, clack. So this was the sound she thought would disturb the guests and draw too much attention to her. Let them be, let them talk among themselves, let them think about their own things without their minds being drawn to what I'm doing here in the kitchen. And so she removed those bangles. I think they were conch. So she broke the bangles to remove them from her wrists, and in that way, not draw too much attention to herself. And so Dattatreya has taken from this a lesson about silence, how silence can help to focus the mind, and how excessive social noise, particularly today with social media, right? It leads to distractions. It can lead to envy and quarrels as well. And so this girl, young bride to be, she found peace in removing the noisy bracelets. And so for those of us addicted to social media, we might also take her as our guru about not needing to make too much noise and draw attention to ourselves. Of course, some presence there to have association and give association and to serve. Everything has its place. But we might also, just as we engage with the media, also take a lesson or be cautioned by this guru of Dattatreya, the young girl who broke her conch shell bangles. Dattatreya's 21st guru was an arrow maker. Once there was a king visiting a town, and Dattatreya observed how, as the king went on a procession through the town, there was an arrow maker sitting in his workshop. And he was so focused on making a very sharp and precise arrowhead or a precise arrow that he didn't even notice that the king had come and gone. All the noise and all the excitement that had been taking place just outside his workshop as the king went past, the arrow maker didn't notice because he was focused on making very, very straight arrows that could fly far and hit their mark and be of service to those who use them. And so Dattatreya took this arrow maker as his guru in the area of focus. How when we are focused on our service, when we're focused on that which we're doing, then we will be undistracted or undisturbed by what happens in the world around us. So we focus in meditation, we focus in japa, we focus on chanting the holy name. We can be fully absorbed and unaware of what goes on around us, and that way we come closer to Krishna. Dattatreya's 22nd guru was a serpent, a snake. The serpent moves very silently and lives in a hole that is made by another creature, like a rat, for example. And so Prabhupada, he also spoke about this, how the sadhu can be like a snake and go into the hole made by another creature and make it his own dwelling. I think somebody wanted to donate some project to Prabhupada. And initially, he offered it to Prabhupada to do some programs there. But once Prabhupada was in India, someone offered some place for Prabhupada to do some programs. But then Prabhupada installed deities and had devotees start doing puja and the full program. And once the deity is installed, and it's not right to send the deity away. And so Prabhupada got the patrons to donate that place. And then Prabhupada told his disciples, this is the way of the snake that moves into the hole created by the rat, eats the rat, and then takes possession of that residence. And so in the same way, a sadhu can move through life with detachment and independence and take advantage of the opportunities that are provided by others. I think we had another guru earlier that offered Dattatreya a similar lesson, the honey thief. So here the snake is also offering a lesson of that nature. Dattatreya's 23rd guru, so we have two more remaining. 23rd guru is a spider. Sukadeva Goswami uses this analogy also in the Bhagavatam. He says how the spider creates a web from its own body and later withdraws it. In the same way, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, creates this universe from himself. Mahavishnu breathes out universes and then withdraws them back into himself. And so the spider shows us something, can give us some insight of Krishna's creative process. The spider is not affected by his web. The spider is not dependent on the web, but the spider may enjoy the web. It expands from the spider, is withdrawn back into the spider. In the same way, Krishna engages with his energies, they expand from him, and at a certain point, he withdraws them back into himself. Finally, the last guru that Dattatreya has learned from, guru number 24, is the wasp. The wasp catches a smaller insect, traps it in its nest, and this is a Vedic understanding. Over time, that smaller insect, constantly thinking of the wasp, itself transforms into a wasp. And so Dattatreya, he says, in the same way, by meditation, whatever it is that we meditate on very intensely, we will become that. If we are meditating on something very intense, maybe with, if we're meditating on something with great desire and attachment, desire to become a certain personality in society, we might achieve that through that intense meditation. Or if we are overconsumed, let's say with anger, we just become more and more angry. We meditate on that anger that we might have towards others. We become consumed by it. We become more and more angry. So with love, so with fear, so with jealousy. So the power of meditation. In the same way, the yogi meditates on themselves as Krishna's servant. They meditate on Krishna and their relationship with Krishna in loving service. And in that way, through a process of meditation, they achieve transcendence, they achieve samadhi. And so in this way, Dattatreya has also taken the wasp as his guru. Let's conclude then with a prayer where we will summarize some of these teachings. I will include the teachings from the first class as well. So in this prayer, we will include the 5 elements and the 5 senses and some of the other gurus that we have discussed. Beloved Krishna, in your boundless compassion, through your incarnation as Dattatreya, you reveal to Yadu and to all of us the path of wisdom through the indirect teachings of the gurus in nature. From the elements, we learn the foundation of character and virtue. Earth grants us stability and service. Water purifies. Fire transforms. Air fosters life and detachment. And the sky reminds us of the boundless nature of spirit. May these elements in nature nurture the virtues that sustain our spiritual journey. Guide us, O Lord, through the celestial and terrestrial bodies as we navigate the world. Let the moon teach us of the soul's constancy amidst the body's changes. Let the sun remind us of freedom from worldly attachments. And let the ocean reveal the way of calmness and depth. In the face of desires, may the elephant's lust, the fish's entrapment, the moth's burning, the deer's distraction by music, and the bee caught in the closing lotus warn us of the dangers of indulging the 5 senses. May we, like Pingala and the hawk, learn to let go, to be like a child, living free from anxiety, and let us be like the arrow maker, focusing our hearts solely on you, our dearest Lord. So there we conclude. Let me acknowledge some of you who joined as I started speaking. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, reflections, put them there in the chat and we can explore further. So we have Shamalaki with us from Chicago, who says Haribol. We have Janava Mata joining us from Dunedin in the South Island of New Zealand. We have Krishangi joining from Sydney, Australia. We have Anandi joining us from Daytona Beach in Florida. We have Alicia joining us from Auckland, New Zealand. Thanks for being here, Alicia. Shabalaki says, I'm fasting today. What Vedas say about long fasting? As I heard 2 opposite stands in devotee groups. Fasting purifies. Fasting is a type of austerity that we may take up voluntarily. And sages, yogis, bhaktas, sometimes they'll take up some voluntary austerity to burn off some karma. Karma will suffering. So negative karma will come to us as suffering. And the yogi burns it off by the power of austerity, voluntarily choosing, I will accept this tapas and that tapas and the other. And in this way, I would choose the nature of my suffering and I'll offer it in sacrifice to Krishna. And so this way the yogi burns off negative karmas by voluntary austerity. So sometimes the devotees will undertake fasting as a vrata to Krishna by offering it to Krishna by also saying that, Krishna, I do this for you, to show my commitment and determination to you. Best is when we take this kind of austerity and we couple it with some practice, direct practice of bhakti. So we're fasting, we starve our senses, we make our senses weaker, but then we want to engage them instead of engaging the senses in something that is pleasing in a material way, some material pleasure. We'll engage our senses in a bhakti practice of hearing and chanting and remembering and so on. So yeah, those are some thoughts on fasting. We might fast and it's fast from food and then feast at the same time on the holy name. That should be our spirit. Okay, Shabalaki says, wow, I saw this video of Srila Prabhupada saying that story about the snake and the sadhu. Him taking American places and turning them to Krishna's places. Great. Yeah, thank you for that, Shabalaki. So there's another example where Prabhupada's using the lessons of the snake that slithers into another animal's hole, takes possession. And so Shabalaki said, I saw a video where Prabhupada was using this again in another context where Western people might create some great grand building facility, and then Prabhupada says, we come and we take it and we engage it in Krishna's service. We transform it into a temple, into an ashram. Thank you for that, for confirming that. Achutananda says, my favorite was the arrow maker. Yeah, I like that as well. And thanks for sharing. If others of you would have shared your favorite guru, please do so. Shabalaki says, a lot of great, rich information. I'll have to listen to it a few times. Bhagavatam, we just engage with it over and over again, and every time we get more insight. Janavamata says, what an inspiring and inspirational transcendental feast. And there we are, that's the feast. So much to digest and apply, so much to share. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you for keeping us nourished and inspired. We really are blessed by the best. Have a blessed Kartik, everyone. Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shabalaki says, some devotees say that fasting is an offense to reject prasadam. So I was confused. Okay. Yeah. So that's, we can still order prasadam. We can order prasadam by touching it or keeping it aside to order later, or by taking a small, tiny portion, 1 grain, for example. So yeah, we shouldn't reject prasadam. We always offer respects to prasadam, especially Mahaprasadam that has been offered to the deity, that's coming from the deity's plate. We must be very respectful. Mahaprasade Govinde, Namo Brahmani Vaishnave, Svalpa Punyavatam Rajan Vishvaso Deva Jayate. So this verse from the Mahabharata compares prasadam to the holy name and to brahmanas. It says, Krishna prasadam, the holy name, service to brahmanas, even a little engagement with them can give us the highest auspiciousness, highest blessings. So yeah, we don't dishonor prasadam. And if we're fasting, we just take a tiny little and we honor prasadam that way and continue our fast. Sri Gandharvika, sharing your favorite guru. Sri Gandharvika is my favorite, was a child. Yeah, that's really nice. When I was 12, I recorded many songs, an album of 10 songs with EMI. And one of the lines from one of the songs, the album was called Through the Eyes of a Child. So that's also significant, Through the Eyes of a Child. Actually, I have the album on my bookshelf behind me. And one of the songs, the line says, "We have seen a modern day sage, Prabhupada his name, the whole world his stage. He was like a child, his mind ever fresh. He spoke transcendental wisdom till his very last breath." So yeah, be like a child. Prabhupada also was described as childlike. Chadavamata, I think it's very healthy for us to connect the philosophy with the world around us. It makes us value this world as our teacher instead of dismissing it as Maya. I agree entirely. Rather than reject, our philosophy in bhakti is not life negating. Rather, it is life affirming. It affirms the world as Krishna's energy and therefore worthy of our respect and to be engaged with in service. We respect it as Krishna's energy, we recognize it as Krishna's, and therefore to be engaged in service. Let's see. So Chanavamata says, reply to Shikha Dharmika, mine too. Also, favorite guru is the child. Shamalaki has taken a very broad approach, saying all of my favorite. It can be hard to choose. They're all quite amazing. But I think it's also helpful when something stands out for us to take note of that. Yes, I'm particularly inspired by this insight. Like in the practices of bhakti, Lord Chaitanya said there are 5 main practices. And I encourage devotees, if you know which of these 5 most inspires you, don't ignore that. Pay attention to it and find opportunities to express that, because that's your link. That's your rope connecting you to Krishna. And so if it's kirtan, if it's Bhagavatam, if it's deity seva, if it's Vrindavan pilgrimage, whatever it is, whatever really excites you and enlivens you, hold on to it. If it's Vaishnava Sangha, whatever, hold on to it, because that's your lifeline. That's your connection with Krishna. And so you can cultivate that as your personal inspiration. Very good. Just switching over to Instagram here to see if we have any further comments. So let's see. Mary Manju 2021 says, how to establish the balance between being like the patient, so being patient and trusting the python versus the dichotomy of being proactive. I'm thinking of saying, God helps those that help themselves. Yeah, good. Thank you for that question. We don't need to take on all of these lessons as our life's path. Dattatreya is a yogi. He is a Avaduta sadhu. And so some of these lessons will be more relevant to us than others. And so living the life of a python yogi, that is relevant for a sannyasi. Is it relevant for a grihasta? Usually not. Maybe for a very simple Brahmana grihasta like Sudama Brahmana. So he's begging, going to door, and he's quite contented having nothing. Of course, later, his wife sees his condition and she's disturbed. She sends him to Krishna. So the Python yogi, that lesson is relevant to Dattatreya, relevant to some other sadhus like that, Madhavendra Puri, he was able to apply that way of maintaining oneself. It is called amrita. Amrita means nectar. The nectar is that you're not having to beg, you're not having to work, you just like amrita, whatever comes, it's nectar. We will accept that as Krishna's mercy. From there, then the another way that the Brahmana maintains themselves is called brita, death. That is, they go and beg door to door. Some people are kind and some people are mean. Some people may disparage them as they come and beg. They'll say, go away, get away from here. You get a job, you be more productive. So that's called brita. Then the other means for the Brahmana to maintain themselves, described by Manu, is that they may teach and accept dakshina, receive charity by teaching, or from there, they may do samskaras, do pujas for other people, and receive some charity for that, some dakshina. But this is, you're taking more karma at this stage. For the Brahmana who wants to be free of that karmic implication, you're starting to take karma when you're doing samskaras, but still quite pure. The Manu says that in an emergency situation, the Brahmana can do some business. They might sell some puja, like puja items, ghee lamps or incense or something to be offered in puja. But he says that the Brahmana should, in emergency, can take the occupation of a kshatriya or a vaishya, but never of a sudra. So the kshatriya, they maintain themselves by administration, by holding land, collecting taxes, conquest. The Vaishya maintains themselves by trade, also agriculture. There's a lot of karma involved in this. So those are the choices. The Sudra by serving, by work, laborious work. So these are the ways that the Grihastas maintain themselves in different ashrams. The Python yogi method, that is for sannyasis or tyagis, or grihastas who are very, very renounced. So Dattatreya is of that caliber. How would it apply to us? Not as a means of living for most of us, but it will just be that sense that just recognizing, even when I do work, it's Krishna's mercy. So I show some ambition, as you were saying, Mary Manju. Krishna helps those who help themselves. So I take responsibility. I do some business, or I work, or I offer some service and receive some remuneration. I'm making the effort as my duty. I'm recognizing ultimately it's Krishna who's giving, and there's also karma that will enable me to receive or not. But still, I'm making the effort, and Krishna's reciprocating with that. So in that sense, we might apply that process of just recognizing what will come will come. Still, we'll make the effort because it is our duty and responsibility according to Varna and Ashram. So yeah, accordingly, we will apply these lessons, taking into account our own natures, our own adhikara, our own qualifications, and life circumstances, life situation. Good. There's a Chutananda with an emoji for the arrow and target. Excellent. Shabalaki says, they stand for controlling different senses or challenges. That's why I see them equal. It gives us wholeness. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Particularly those that relate to the five senses: the fish, the moth, the elephant, the deer, and the bee. And then we have the elements. They're all very nice. Janamamata says, while you were explaining the child, I got so many insights and realizations about how we weigh ourselves down with so much unnecessary baggage. I'm going to have to clean up, let it all go so I can fly and play. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Janamamata. Shabalaki says, are the grihastas supposed to become like a sannyasi in the end to achieve total success in bhakti? Krishna talks about, so with Arjuna, he says, let that sannyas be internal. You do your duty as a kshatriya, you do your duty as a grihasta, and your detachment will be internal, as you say, idam krishnaya, idam namama. This is for Krishna. I am offering this to Krishna. So will it come to the point of full internal sannyas? Our process is that it will become to the point of pure love for Krishna. And so as we fall completely in love with Krishna, other things become insignificant to us. So in that sense, yes, the gopis are the greatest sannyasis. When Krishna told the gopis to go home, they came to the forest in the Sharad Purnima, the full moon night in the autumn, to see him. And Krishna said, go home, don't be here in the forest. You may be here to be with me, but it is not right. It is not appropriate. You have other responsibilities and commitments. So go back. And they say, we renounce all of these other so-called commitments and responsibilities if they are an obstacle to being with you. So they became fully detached in their love for Krishna. So in that sense, we are supposed to be like a sannyasi, but not renunciation for its own sake necessarily. It's for Krishna's sake. Janamamata says, replying to Janamamata, I find kirtan and attentive japa really helps with this, clearing out the baggage. Yeah, that's great. Kirtan can be really tangible for us. Janamamata says, Hari Bol, Jai. Just another move here to Instagram. Checking in. Mary Manju says, very nice reply. Much appreciated. You're most welcome, Mary Manju. I wish you all well. Now, let me say, I'm leaving for India, for Vrindavan right now as I finish the class. And the time right now in India is like 2:30 a.m. And I'll be busy on parikrama with Indra Maharaj, a little bit of an unpredictable schedule. So I'm going to be pausing the classes for Kartik. I know Kartik is the time when we want to increase our hearing and chanting. And here I am reducing at least this class. But I beg your pardon as I do so I can just focus on serving there during the parikrama. And you'll be able to watch the parikrama live online. They get broadcast on a YouTube channel. So we'll share that link. We encourage you to take your nourishment, your Kartik nourishment, by watching the live parikramas. And I'll be giving quite a few classes over that period as well. So that'll be my Kartik offering to all of you. And in a sense, a continuation of the classes, just in a different context, in a slightly different, a very different environment, and not necessarily with the schedule that we've had. So I beg your forgiveness and also blessings as I seek to go to Sri Vrindavan Dham to serve there during Kartik with Indrajuna Maharaj. Let's conclude with a prayer. Well, blessings. May your ears be eager through this Kartik period, in particular for hearing about Krishna, for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. May your tongue continue to develop a taste for hearing, for chanting Krishna's holy names with relish and attention and devotion. May your eyes always be searching for sight of Krishna's beautiful Sri Vigraha, his beautiful form. May your feet be engaged in walking to sacred places of Krishna's pastimes, to dancing in Sankirtan, in the temple, which is also a sacred place. May your hands be ever ready to serve Krishna's devotees, for serving Vaishnavas with your kindness, with your friendship, with your love. Through these practices, may prema awaken in your heart that softens with compassion and moves you to share the treasures of bhakti with others. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Haribo. So just acknowledging here, I didn't see earlier, we have Joan as well. Haribo, Joan, good to see you. Kirtidas says, safe travels. Okay, lots of comments that I hadn't seen. So Shama Manjari says, safe travels, keep us in your thoughts and prayers. Chutananda says, have a blessed time with Indra Maharaj and Parikrama. We wait for you to share your realizations and inspirations from this. Lakshmi Narasimha Priya says, Kartik Ki Jai. Bihal says, safe journey to India. Have a great time in the Dham. Thank you, Bihal. Janamamata, keep us in your prayers, Prabhu. I will. Have a wonderful Kartik Jai Shri Radhe. Jambavati in Sydney, great to see you, says Haribol. Thank you all so very much. I will keep you in my prayers. I'll be thinking of you, wishing you well as I get taken by Indra Maharaj to these different holy places in Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you all. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.